To be fair.
Pros.
I'm recording this, so if you all your threats to murder me in an alley.
The darkest alley.
I'm sorry, the darkest of alleys.
It won't be a well-lit alley. I'll trust me on that.
Siegs is gonna murder me, everyone. I don't know how I feel about this. We've got things to talk about because you are a magical Discord and you do awesome things and put questions up for me to talk about, and it makes me happy inside.
This has been the first stream we're doing together in a while, so we got the little Brad Siegs magic going on.
Happening. We're ready to answer the hot questions. I put one up. Waffles versus pancakes, Siegs.
I mean, they're both good. First of all, they're both good. They're not French toast, so they have that going against both of them. French toast is the superior breakfast bread.
I'd like to argue with you on that, but man, French toast is amazing.
French toast is outstanding, especially when it's well done. But I would say waffles, honestly. I love how the syrup just gets inside there and mixes all. You have to be doing it with syrup. If you eat any of these without syrup, you are a crazy person.
And you're a communist.
You're a Tau player.
You're a Tau player.
You're one of the Tau players who are keeping their win rate down, so good on you.
Waffles versus pancakes is an 8-2 matchup. I love it. Well, let's go to the wall. We'll start slow. We had one for John, actually. Do you expect Custodes to see some love as the win percentage is super high while the TWIP is awful?
The T-whip. It's
T-whip.
Right? Yes.
I mean, I'm going to call it the TWIP.
Tournament. It's something, being in a tournament winning position or something like that. But in my opinion, probably not. The biggest thing is a lot of the middle factions, in my opinion, Custodes is a middling faction, basically only have one viable competitive build. For me, for Custodes, it is the vehicle spam list. Tons of Dreadnoughts, 3 Gladius, just try and kill people, be as durable as possible. And for these middle tier factions, they just need more diversity in their builds. In my opinion, the infantry, not the infantry characters, but all the infantry should get OBSEC back, not just the basic troops. I think that change alone would help that. And then make small.
They get a data sheet though. I mean, a lot of these armies are tough to balance when you're looking at a Custodes, a Harlequins, and stuff like that. Ones that have had high win rates in the past and they're trying to deal with. When you only have a few data sheets, I think it's very difficult.
They have a lot. They have a whole thing of Forge World data sheets, and they have a decent amount in their codex. Not amazing, but with Forge World, they actually have quite a few. And the problem is they haven't really revisited Forge World in a while. And there are several armies, Custodes #1, that is really impacted by Forge World. So I go back and look at some things like the Venatari. Them losing that strat was a huge deal. Now they're just good as a decent MSU type of shooting unit, but I would think about buffing some of their other infantry units. The Terminators especially, the Terminators need to see the table, and they just don't.
They're supposed to be the poster boys for that army too.
Exactly.
Which is crazy because the people that you associate with Custodes don't even make the board ever. So
yeah, I would work on the infantry, bringing them up to be as viable as the vehicles instead of changing anything about the vehicles.
This is a good chat. Good question from Lavarius. The question. I have a question. What are your predictions for the next FAQ? I love my Quins, and I'm afraid GW will knee jerk like always. I'm actually super looking forward to it. I'm super worried about it because of the fact that there's a couple factions that I think are going to get over nerfed. I think Krons are going to get over nerfed. Krons literally just got to be playable and competitive in the last 2 years, and the army is still very killable, and I don't want to see it get nerfed too hard. I think Sisters are probably going to get nerfed too hard because they're in a decent place, but they need some of that. And GW does not play well. They don't touch light. And you saw when we nerfed, for instance, Dark Harlequins. So we just basically took them and punted them out of the room. And I'm a little worried about that with Harlequins. Again, an army that's been doing very, very well, but I don't think needs that much. I think it just does very well into the meta right now.
Really? I mean, Harlequins are out here 20-0ing top players at W2C. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
I heard
doing
that when that happened though, that guy was heavily overrated and played terrible.
well past his
Well
prime.
past his prime. Was fairly overconfident into the match, made a couple mistakes that were horrific.
So I also agree. I think Harlequins actually have some tough matchups. I don't think they're you just show up and you beat everybody with Harlequins. They do have some tough matchups. I think the combination that I think is too powerful with Harlequins is specifically light, and it's in particular the combination of trans hitman, where you can only be hit on unmodified 4s, 5s, and 6s, combined with no rerolls.
Yeah,
and throw -1 to hit in there for no reason.
Yeah,
it's that combination.
The no rerolls is a big deal on that. To tell you the truth, no rerolls.
You shouldn't have those two rules together. It's just silly.
In everything that they've had that on has become a problem. To be honest, you know what I mean? It's become overly tough and inflated, especially when it's overly tough on a fairly feeble vehicle. You know what I mean? You got to figure it's T5 6 wounds. You know what I mean? It's just you have to put so much.
Or a invuln. It's still very cheap for what you get.
That's
for
the thing.
Fast it is.
It's a very cheap vehicle that requires, and when you're playing light, requires a lot of volume for you to get rid of it. So that's a big deal on that.
Yeah,
so
I honestly would do some tweak with that interaction, and that's it. Or you could look at their secondaries. They have some of the best secondaries. The reason I wouldn't touch their secondaries as much is because they also do the generic ones supremely well, and I don't think it's going to change their score that much, frankly.
I agree on that one. The Marine-wise, I can't imagine they're not going to give some serious buffs to Marines. If you look at...
They do.
Armor
Attempt killed Marines.
Well,
it's an army that's all AP 1 and 2.
Exactly. I was just going to say, it killed itself with its own buff, killed itself.
So all the well, that's because they tried to buff every power armor army in the game. They didn't need to do that. That was silly. They should have specifically focused on Codex Astartes and their supplements. And in my opinion, first of all, vehicles get core. Like the vehicles are trash. They are overcosted and they refuse to decrease the cost. Just make them core. Just make them core.
Well, they need point changes because, and when I'm looking at it, you got to figure also the GW is a company that tries to sell models, which is a big deal. They also sell more Space Marines than they sell anything else. So I can't imagine that they leave them in the dumpster for too long. And we've got a couple doing well. A couple of hand-to-hand armies are doing well. But man, is it tough to trade with Marines right now? A lot of most of their units are not point efficient for points per attack, points per wound, and everything like that. So when you're getting into a trade war, it just seems like you're always on the losing side. I can't imagine. And they took a bunch of point nerfs that were basically 6 to 12 months past what, you know what I mean, where they should have been at that point in time.
I mean, some of the Necron ones haven't been reversed either from that time.
Yeah, it's just, and it's crazy on that. So I can't imagine that they're not going to get some serious points reductions. I might be wrong. I have absolutely no idea, but I think Marines are actually fairly easy to fix with point reductions. But the thing is that, do you think we need some AP in that army?
I mean, that's why I think the vehicles getting core would be a huge deal, because the vehicles have the AP for the most part. They have the high AP weapons generally, whereas the infantry are largely AP 1 and AP 2, although some of the more elite ones are like Hellblasters. But if they buff the vehicles up, that will not only increase the viability of a lot of data sheets in the Space Marine army, but it also give them some of those higher strength, higher AP weapons.
Going to the wall a little bit. Do they nerf an army like Blood Angels at the same time they buff others? I think they just leave Blood Angels alone and they raise the other ones up. Because Blood Angels are doing decent, but they're not setting the world on fire. Oh, Snivar! Man, 22 months now, brother. I love it.
What a champion. Absolute champion. Snivar, you're the best.
He is. He also brought me wine.
So he brought us tons of goodies. He was just an outstanding person. Thank you, Snivar.
Iceland for life.
Can we get our thoughts on the Voltann post nerf? I played a couple games with them. I've only played games with them post nerf, and I think they're a very solid army. Basically, they still shoot supremely well. Judgment tokens are that good, and they make all those like low strength weapons extremely powerful when they auto wound you, and you're just like, cool, I have a boatload of saves to make. I'm gonna fail a bunch of these. So I think their damage output is still excellent. The issue is they basically have very few units, and they also kind of struggle with just being move blocked by fast, cheap units. So there's ways to try and play around it. I'm trying to come up with some different ways myself, but I think just the lack of stuff definitely hurts them on the denser boards where it's very easy to move block their units. Because if they're not shooting you, they're not doing much of anything at all, unfortunately.
I think that they heavy-handed it. I think they could have chose to play with mechanics a little bit more as opposed to just slamming points down on them before games are played. I hate, and I know they needed some changes, period, but I hate changes, and I'll be the unpopular opinion on this. I hate changes before we get tournament games. So
I mean, I'm on the same boat. First of all, if they were 550 point, the list that I submitted before I saw this, the data slate, was 550 points that was nerfed off that list. 550. If we're talking Drukhari, they got about 200 to 230 points when they were broken. Admech got 300 to 340. Tau got about 340 to 400. That it's more than any other faction has gotten.
With literally no data though. That's my whole point. Is like there's 0 tournament games with Voltann, and the thing is that the mechanics that didn't get changed are the ones that I thought should get changed. Their CP regen is insanity. The fact that they reduce 1 every turn, so you get 5 free there. Their psychic power is on a 5, which is basically just a free CP, and then they've got a CP regen, which they all stack together, so they can basically get 15 more CP every game than you're getting. I actually thought that was a bigger problem because of the fact that we've looked at armies that did that in the past. Remember when we had IG basically fueling Blood Angels with the Castellan, where you just had unlimited, and they've got good strats. The thing is that you can't. They did the same thing when they tried to nerf planes in the first place. When they just went every time there was a good flyer, they pointed it out of existence. They didn't fix the mechanic. They didn't fix anything. They just went, now it's too much to play. And with Voltann, I don't think they changed any of the mechanics. They didn't change any of the problems with it. They just went, now it's too expensive, so you may or may not play it.
Yeah, well, they did change the key synergy. One of the key synergies with this army was 6's. Hitting with judgment tokens counts as an unmodified 6 to wound, which almost tons of rules interact with. That change alone meant that they should have went for like 300, 350 type of points nerf on the army. That rule change is massive, and I think doing that plus 550 points was too much. Either you just do the points and you see where it lies with the rules as is, or you go ahead and make that rule change and then you take out, like 2 to 3 units from the army instead of taking out like 4 or 5 units.
Yeah, I think you put mechanics first. I think they just were heavy-handed and clunky, and they went the communities having upset.
Are you telling me a Berserk is the same points cost as a Sanguinary Guard? Like, come on, get out of here. It's ridiculous.
Let's go to Lyle with a super chat, massive super chat. He's rocking it with $20 in. Lyle's killing it always. Nassim did a video after coming in second in LGT that he still thinks Tau should be nerfed, and that Tau lists using crisis suits and commanders should go up 400 to 600 points. Hot take. Do Tau need to be nerfed again?
No. If you lose to Tau, you got outplayed. The only thing that Tau should have nerfed is the Sunshark bombers. I just don't like planes. I don't like the ability to alpha strike people. So, Brad felt the full force of the planes when I played against him here. He just picked up a full unit of Dire Avengers and his bikes, and it was like, wow, that was awesome. I had nothing to do.
You can't do hardly any against it unless you're basically sacrificing the rest of your deployment to box them out, you know what I mean, to put everything back.
What should happen is, and Brad just made this point about them pointing flyers out of the game, bring all those flyers, the AdMech flyers, bring them back down in points caused, the other ones that got nerfed, and instead, planes start in reserve. Planes just start in reserve.
You just have to change
the reserve, you come down turn 2.
The flyer mechanic is hot trash. There's my hot take. It's hot trash. It's a non-interactable mechanic. Anybody that's here to any of the videos that I'm on knows how I feel about this. The fly mechanic is a busted, stinky piece of poo. Throw it in the trash. Make it interactable. Make it hard to hit. It's just, you can't have something that can, move block, hit anywhere on the board, unlimited movement effectively. It's ridiculous. It's just, I love the thinking right there, Siegs, with going, put them in a...
Just get rid. The problem with planes is the alpha strike potential.
Yeah, because
it also was the fact that you could run 6 planes. Like, I'm glad they got rid of that. 2 planes is perfectly reasonable, although I would make it 2 plane datasheet, 2-plane selection, so that you could run more than 2 individual Remoras. That's just silly. But get rid of
not
the
even a
alpha.
real plane though. Remora's like a
Hey, Remoras are a real plane.
Remoras are amazing. However,
You
they're
love
not
Remoras.
a plane. They're the Diet Coke of
They look like
flyers.
a plane. Just get rid of the alpha strike potential, and then continue with you cannot just run 6 planes and be too, stat check people. So those are the 2 issues with planes, and then just point them appropriately so that you could see 1 or 2, and it's perfectly fine.
Exactly. Corey goes.
But if you take away the alpha strike from the planes, if you're losing to crisis suits and commanders, you're just getting outplayed. That simple. The army already got 400 points of increases. If you need more than that, you're struggling. You gotta figure out what the weaknesses of Tau are, which is lack of obsec, and they also have generally cheap, easy to kill units. And the thing is, with crisis suits, you can just move block the positions where they could potentially get angles on you. You got to think the high level. Don't just brain dead. I get shot by Tau all game. I'm dead.
We got Slack Onion on it because the Warcomm balance video this morning did a lot to show me that GW is thinking about balance the right way. What are your thoughts on it? See, did you see this? I did not, unfortunately. I can't comment on it because I did not see it.
So they basically wrote an article kind of talking about the overall win rates and how the game is in its health. And as you can see, the game is so much more healthy than it was, 5-6 months ago,
So huge.
where it was basically 4 armies had a chance to win, and if you weren't one of those 4 armies, you were getting absolutely wrecked by those 4 armies. So that's awesome. I think the game is in a much better spot, and they highlighted that 4 factions are kind of outside their curve. They're looking at that. They want people, at least every faction, within that 45 to 55% win rate, which that's a pretty wide band. I honestly would try and narrow that a little bit further down, maybe like a 52, 53 to a 48. Get that a little bit closer, because a 10% win percent difference is quite significant, honestly. So
it's a big deal, especially when you have a significant amount of data.
But what they said basically is Tyranids are number 1, 59%, and Harlequins are number 2 at 58%, and then it goes down a bit where you get Sisters and Necrons, and then at the bottom is Space Marines and AdMech at 38, 39%. So they highlighted those 4 factions as ones that are probably going to be the ones that get the most changes, which is perfectly reasonable to me. Like we said, Space Marines they need more data sheets available. They need points decreases, but these usually don't have a lot of points decreases. So hopefully that comes in chapter approved. AdMech is a complex army because the army is just too hard to play. That is the problem with it. It's way too hard to play. The fact that I was the only person above 50% win rate at WTC with them when a lot of other top players are running them for their teams, the army is way too hard to play. So however you want to make it an easier army, I would probably think about, and first of all, this is the win percentage AdMech with Skitarii, which is by far their best. If we just took Cult Mechanicus, it'd be like a 15% win rate because it's that garbage. So they just have a horrible internal balance, and then the stuff that does do well, Skitarii, the problem there is it's just simply there's too many downsides.
So many rules too. There's interactions that you have to be on top of all.
Just compare that army to Voltann. Voltann basically doesn't have any downsides to any of its rules. AdMech, there's a downside to every single thing. There's a restriction or 2 restrictions. So I would like to see some of those restrictions disappear so the army is just easier to play for most people. That would be the change I would go for with AdMech. What that specifically is, we could debate it, but make the army easier to play. And then for Tyranids, the fact that they're still the number 1 army with mediocre secondaries, they're not bad because their specific ones aren't that great, but they have access to a psychic one, and
they take banners.
They can do banners. Yeah, exactly. So their secondary game isn't as bad as people say. It's their specific faction ones aren't amazing, but they're 59% with major nerfs. This army was just beyond broken, and it still is. It just has silly mechanics. The amount of mortal wounds it puts out needs to be toned down. Number 1.
Which is funny because they toned it down a time and a half, which makes you think, holy
They toned down
crap.
the Malceptor. The whole army just spams mortal wounds all across the board.
Well,
it
you
is
can see
absurd.
it when we went to Europe, and you saw certain armies just went, there's so many mortal wounds in this army that we're just going to go ahead and make that the army, and just say, you probably can't deal with that.
That has been the biggest thing that I don't like about the current meta, is that a lot of the top armies just spam so many mortal wounds that it doesn't matter what your army does, which is one of the reasons why Voltann just has a weakness against top armies like Tyranids or Eldar. The amount of mortals they put out, you're just like, oh, I guess I take it on all my durable elite units that don't have any defense against this. So I would love to see the mortal wounds in the game come down. Tyranids are a huge offender. Triple Shadow Seer Harlequins and a bunch of Neuropistols. They're also a decent offender of this, although nowhere near as Tyranids. But I'd like to see that toned down.
That's still like just a huge amount. You just got to figure 8 boats.
Tyrant's got to go. Reaper Obliterax, nerf that thing into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that certain things are going to get nerfed, and I have, again, no insider info on this, but like I've talked to the guys before from GW, and effectively what they look for is something in every single army every single time. That's going to get nerfed.
Every single army. Yeah. That's relevant.
So, Val coming in. 2 of the good guys right here. Throws changing bucket. That's $5 Canadian for the record. 2 toonies and a loony. Woohoo!
Thanks so much for joining us, Val. Hope you're doing well, brother. And then there was a couple other super chats up there, Brad.
Did I miss another super chat?
Yeah, there's 2 more.
Oh, Super Baja. Oh, man, how did I miss that? So I tend to agree with Richard when he said earlier that the Obelisk and Monolith list he was talking about is a great meta pick. Thoughts? That's all you, my friend.
This is a consistent inside joke, and I'm proud of you, Super Baja, for continuing it. There is no way that I will ever run one of the big things until they get rules that actually matter. The closest one to run is the Obelisk is one of the worst models in the entire game. It's not.
I'm not going to lie.
Absolutely trash.
Totally
How they
waiting
came up
for
with those rules and thought, hey, somebody might actually put this in a list, boggles my mind. But the Monolith, it has actual interesting stratagem support because you can teleport things through it. The problem is it's a gigantic non-fly unit. Why does it not have the fly keyword?
Oh, dude.
They should give it the drop pod keyword so it can just start in reserve and come down turn 1.
It used to push things out of the way, remember?
Exactly, yeah. Like it's enormous model. It's like twice the size of the old
building.
Exactly, and it doesn't have fly. It cannot move anywhere if your opponent
you
has
can literally put
cells.
literally anything in the way. Also, not only does it not have fly, but on most standard boards, it can't move through its own stuff. Like just go.
If you can barely deploy it on certain terrain features.
You're like, hey, I'm playing GW this weekend. Well, I guess it sits in my deployment zone because I can't literally make the turn. I gotta have people push. Hold on, I'm trying to move here, guys.
No, it can't go through the middle of the table either.
Right. It just sits. I was wondering on that question. You're like, it's an inside joke. I'm like, maybe Siegs is next level braining.
No, there's no next level. The next level is writing rules that actually matter.
Those things are bad.
That's the thing is like these, you see these comments on YouTube. Games Workshop likes to try and make broken rules for new models so that they sell. There's so many counterexamples. The Monolith is chief amongst them. Brand new, gigantic model, looks awesome. Garbage rules.
It's bad garbage. I like the fact that its best thing is it punches really well.
It does, especially when the Silent King's nearby because it's core, so it rerolls wounds. It's like, thank God my buddy the Silent King's nearby. I'm going to really hit these guys hard.
And he's always going to be nearby because I can't actually move anywhere, so he's always going to be close to me. Super chat, Maiden. What is your favorite faction and why is it IG? Here's why it's not IG. I'm going to give my anti-IG. I do love the IG guys. When I got into the game, 2 of my best friends were playing IG, so I played it consistently. Here's my problem with IG. I'm playing a fantastical game where I could literally be an immortal elf, a giant demon prince, a super soldier, or I could be like Siegs and I that just got handed plasma guns. Go. Boo.
Brad would roll the 1.
Yes, I would 100%. I am the guy that would immediately overheat the plasma pistol and die.
I look over at Brad and he's just a burning pile of plasma fire.
Pointing the gun the wrong way, just instantly dead.
For guard, honestly, I don't like the models that much. The old pewter models where they had like very interesting, unique sub factions like Armageddon, the Vostroyans, they're like all those unique sub factions that look really cool. If those got plastic hits, I'd be much more excited about guard. The Mordian Iron Guard are the guys who are my favorite, the ones who look like Napoleonic soldiers. Those guys are the ones that I would run if they ever got plastic hits. But right now, I just don't like the models that guard have. They're pretty plain and not particularly interesting.
You know what? Death Corps and Krieg, though, are pretty badass. I'll give you that.
Jack and John are heading out to the Games Workshop tournament. Wish them luck.
Not too much luck if they play me, of course. I'll be learning my rules. I'll be reading
Right, deep in a codex.
I'm reading the Demon Codex, a deep dive on the way there. So, and you're never too much into Starship Troopers, by the way. Fantastic, total popcorn movie. Never too much. Lyle coming back again with $5. The only armies that have not won a GT this season are Admech, Guard, and Wolves. Hot take. Which one of this should have won an event by now will? Wolves. Because they have a ton of punch melee, and I think that if you get them in the right event, they can smash if you go a bunch of other melee armies. The problem is they have bad matchups into certain things. Like, I don't know, cough, T'au will just go, hey man, do you have 3 total units that can interact with me? Sweet.
They also struggle against melee armies that have good screening units, like Necrons, when they have the Scarab
well,
screen.
They just don't. They have the read problem. They have the read problem. They also don't have the words Sanguinary Guard and Death Company with them. So if you go, hey, I need to take an extra turn before I get there, you're like, are you a flying Terminator that goes 14? No. Well, you're probably not going to make it here. So I don't know, though. Guard, weirdly enough, have some pretty decent matchups into some stuff with just spamming shots. Auto wounding on 6s is not a joke versus some armies, man. And the fact that they have unnerfed indirect is a real thing. So we make fun of the Guard all the time because they have the no codex, but they are terrifying into certain things.
Yeah. The problem is there's so many Phasecap models now, they just can't deal with any of that.
Yeah, well, also the fact that they're still made of blast. It's insanity to me that Guard has 0 fall back and shoot and just shoot into combat with blast weapons. So you basically go, hey, what happened?
Fall back in is an order.
Not with tanks. You know what you do when you get touched by your tank gets touched? You go, put your opponent your hand and go, well, I gave it a good go, but you touched my tanks, and there's apparently absolutely nothing I can do about that now.
It's the fact if your tanks are getting touched, your whole infantry OBSEC screen is gone, so
True.
You're not going to play the mission. That's over.
Yeah, well, it's not that hard.
They have no legitimate counter assault. The Bulgrin and Ogrins
They're
need to
so
be actual
bad.
units, but they're not.
They do absolutely nothing. We got another super chat.
They suffer from 8th edition combat profiles compared to 9th edition. Now they have like, what is it, AP1 on the Bulgrin big mall? Well, guess what? Now when you have sweep attacks in 9th edition in the modern books, it's AP3 on sweep attacks. Like, come on.
They just get trashed. It's silly. Superpower off. Okay, real question. Ooh, hold on now. What would you do to make I don't even know what that is. Something, Richard.
It's a T'au Sept.
Oh, my
the
bad.
one that buffs the alien auxiliaries.
Got it. I was thinking, I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And then I went, oh, yeah, it's the weird T'au Sept. I like the dynamic mirror field and alien support, so I wanted to try it. You know what? I'm going to give a Brad rant on this, because why doesn't the Tau have a army of renown? They have so many alien races that they've basically put into their collective, and we don't have any of them on the board. They can make the army like totally multi-faceted, which the Tau army is. If you read through the fluff, they have like all of these mercenary reserves and different styles, and they're constantly adapting their tactics. That's the whole reason that they're supposedly spreading out so fast and doing so well. And we have none of that. I would love to see a Tau army that has all kinds of different alien factions. That's
what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a coalition of all different. I was hoping that they would get Leagues of Voltann as an ally, because they have Demerug as allies, which are kind of like space dwarves.
Yeah.
That would have been cool. I just have more potential allies. Obviously, you would lose a bunch of rules, but just having the ability to do so would be interesting. For Daliath, it's by far the worst sept. It's just not even close, because alien auxiliaries are not there to do anything besides to hold objectives, screen, and get you points. It's all they're there to do. So they don't. When you're trying to make them as damage dealers or anything, you don't do it. Dynamic mirror field is a good strat. The problem is it just doesn't buff the damage of the army enough, and that's what pretty much all the good septs do. Is even Borkon does some great damage buffs. Farsight Enclaves, obviously, T'au Sept. Sisea is much better than Daliath as well. Like, pretty much every sept, Daliath and Viorla are the two that are like, question mark, what is even going on here? Why did they even print those pages? Just get them out of the book. They're useless. So I don't know what you would do to try and actually take advantage of their rules, because you don't actually want to be buffing your alien auxiliaries. If you're buffing them, you're not buffing other parts of the army, and that's a huge part of Tau. Especially
Because they should have more alien auxiliaries that we can play with. That would be a great army. They just don't have the tools yet.
The alien auxiliaries should have rules that actually make them interesting units. Besides, I score points.
Yeah,
They're basically
that's my whole point.
Points.
Read
what do you do, alien auxiliary? I score points.
I'm a huge nerd about this, and I read the books, the fluff, and everything else.
Crude are scary.
Well, they also have 2 critters there, but they have like
They're
a
carnivores,
million.
Brad. They're carnivores.
They also adapt based on who they eat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got double super chat here. Clown mode, which I always love just saying. Plus, we're talking about elves.
Clown mode's a hero.
What buff should Eldar get, if any? Also, shout out Voltann.
Craft World should get a nerf to Phoenix Lords. There should be no reason for a Phasecap on a.
I will literally punch you in that dark alley.
And then their strat to stand back up should be on a 6-up. If it's 1 CP.
You know what? This is the
5 up on 2
This
CP.
is the kind of elf hate I get from the Art of Warhouse. Constant elf hatred, and we are going to petition. If there was a galactic council, I would be there right now to try to stop this elf hatred.
No. Anything with a Phasecap should be either targetable or it should have more than 9 wounds. That just period. Abaddon, Phoenix Lords, no. They either do it like the Catan or they have a ton of extra wounds.
Unplayable for so long, and now they are. You literally step away. You put
They
your
would
hands.
be completely playable without the Phasecap. A 1 CP stand back up, amazing. And then you also have access to OBSEC on them, and they buff the various aspects. They're good enough. Phasecaps are just dumb. Just get rid of this.
I'll give you that. I'll trade that. We'll do actual compromises here. I'll give you the Phasecap if you can make Guardians not so ridiculously expensive for what
Done.
they do. Done.
Guardians should be a core part of the army. Just like Fire Warriors and Tau should be a core part of the army.
100%.
They have really messed up on some of the key data sheets, unfortunately.
When you don't see the actual troop, the unit that's supposed to be most represented on the board,
Absolutely key.
never seen on the boards.
What I love about the Tau book, right, is that in there is what a hunter cadre looks like. And that's every core unit. It's got your commander, it's got your crisis suits in there, it's got your fire warriors, it's got your stealth suit unit, and then it has your devilfish, and then finally it has broadsides. Taking core away from broadsides was one of the most absurd things, which it just shows how core is just a silly concept that they should also get rid of. Phase caps, core, get rid of them. Yeah. They're terrible.
The fact that Eldar troops have been bad for time just drives me crazy. I want to bring Guardians, and I did in my last army. Just
early 8th, when the Codex came out in 8th, they were actually pretty decent to have one block. It was relied on stacking a bunch of rules.
It wasn't even that they were good. It was literally you brought a 20-man unit and you put 15 buffs on them.
Yeah.
So, sorry guys, a little bit on the line. All right, Lau goes. A competitive army renown, the 8, would be good for the game. Yes or no?
It'd be perfect for the game. That's exactly what we need: is more commanders, more special top characters.
Yeah, exactly.
We need the 8 again. The funny thing is that I think they just gave up with the 8 because they tried it 2 different times and they couldn't get the rules right. So they were just like, it's not in this codex.
It was super good the one time when you had what's his face. What was the stupid the Riptide guy that they based an entire army around?
Ovesa
Star. Yeah. Back in the day, we had a Vesa Star, and then they re-released it, and
Earthgas pilot. Okay,
they were just bad after that. The 8, you're like, oof, you guys smell pretty badly.
Yeah, the fact that they wrote the 2 different versions in 8th edition, then we're just like, all right, no more in 9th. We can't get this right.
They did have the usual suspects picture of them though. In order.
This would have been the best addition for them too, because they actually improved a lot of the weapons. The problem with the commanders is each one of Farsight's commanders has just like a bunch of random weapons.
The most random shit ever. It's so funny.
They were mostly trash. Now those weapons are actually decent.
Yeah. Before they had like, why do you have this? They also had the weirdest subsystems with each one too. You're just like, well, that doesn't do anything. All right, going back to Aiden. What do you think about this one? This is probably one of my favorite questions so far. Which faction commander would win an egg and spoon race?
The Kroot Shaper.
The Kroot Shaper?
Yeah, the Kroot Shaper. That guy is speedy. He's agile. He's an agile hunter. Okay, he'll find
agile hunter.
My money's on the Kroot Shaper.
Bro, a Cold Star commander will literally cheat and show up at the finish line with his egg and his spoon.
Yeah, but you can see him doing it. The Kroot Shaper, he's going to be a ninja. He's going to be sneaking through the forest.
Lyle's back. Hot take. 40k should draw inspiration from AOS. Yes, that's basically our testing ground. And make the game mostly about battlefield troops, centerpiece characters. Yes or no? One thing that I wish that we got from AOS, why are their big model sculpts so much better than ours? AOS big models are phenomenal. They look amazing. I just want to put some stuff on the board just to put giant models on the board because they look insane.
I mean, the models in Age of Sigmar are incredible. Pretty much all of them, even the smaller ones, are great. Yeah. So they're doing a fantastic job on the models. In terms of what I would like from Age of Sigmar, I don't have enough practice or understanding of Age of Sigmar to know what any of the mechanics are. So not particularly useful there. But what I would like from thinking about in 40k, for these like battle line and getting more troops and centerpiece characters, I think they've done actually a pretty decent job making 9th edition armies look like 40k armies, much more so than 8th edition. There's quite a bit less spam, and you're typically running a diversity of units. I think the action economy has helped with that because you want a bunch of trash units to just do actions. But what I would like to see is kind of the main core of the troops, like T'au Fire Warriors, Guardians in Eldar. They get some extra rule for running them. I don't think giving OBSEC to basic troops is enough nowadays. Those basic troops should have some special other rule.
They should be able to do mechanics they should be the things that do the special, basically whatever your mission's special rules are, those should be the things that you have to have troops for. It would also mean that your opponent starts to focus on troops. It would make it dynamic and you'd have to interact with things.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see something like that working, and then just change the mission so each one has a unique thing that a unit should be doing.
I'm going backwards on clown mode because he doubled up. Thank you so much in Super Chats. But please no double turn. Yeah, double turn in 40k would be disastrous.
Or the damage spilling over. Both of those would be absurd.
I can't even imagine playing and you just play your T'au and just take 2 turns in a row. It's just like, well, this game went poorly.
Brad never had a chance.
I'm like, where's Brad? He's making mimosas in the other room. That's silly. Conmo, thoughts on face caps? What are the pros and cons of the mechanic? I'll tell you what the face cap mechanic is for, everyone. Because they want to have centerpiece characters and things of that nature not just get randomly picked up, and they want to be more dramatic, cinematic kind of deal where they take part in the battle and they're leading for more often. That was the reason behind phase caps, is they want those storyline characters and commanders that to actually be on the board for.
But then they didn't give it to them. Magnus doesn't have it. Mortarion doesn't have it.
I know. I've done the huge model thing. Huge models are hard to balance. Hence the reason, by the way, why my Magnus and Mortarion are still collecting dust. They're probably the best painted things I have that I own. And they sit.
What they should do, get rid of face caps is just a silly idea. What they should instead do is that's where trans hitman no reroll should exist, is on these big things. If they're a certain distance away, like when they're more than 24 inches away, they get that rule. Something like that, where it's actually interactive. You can still actually do damage to them, but you're really trying hard. Something like that could work to keep them alive. But face cap is just silly.
I mean, Magnus just, holy God, is he terrible now compared to what he was before. And he was still risky before. But man, you don't want to put your centerpiece model on the board and your opponent just goes, hey, look, it's Magnus. Pink, dead. Fairly easily, by the way. Also, the fact that he's hitting a superstar pose with a staff and his arm out and his wings flinging out. So
it's even the inequality. Like Abaddon getting it, absolutely absurd. Phoenix Lord's getting it, absurd. Catan should just not have it. Just don't have it, but be a normal character floating around.
Yeah, I agree on that one. It's just, the thing is I would love to play with some of those things, but you just can't. You know what I mean? It's just,
yeah.
It's not any fun to go, hey, look at this giant centerpiece model I have, and your opponent's like, hold on, let me show you my new magic trick. Copperfield, he's gone.
Yeah, the crazy defensive mechanics that they've been putting out there, they can actually go on them. Just put a distance restriction on it, where if they're more than 24 inches away, you get it, so you can't blow them up easily turn 1. And then from there, you just play out the game. Something like that would be cool. Maybe 18 inches, whatever.
I love this question. Super chat from Probably Coco. How would you guys fix character protection line of sight? They did a huge job. I have to give them props on the fact that Bodyguard was one of the most busted mechanics that showed up in any edition. It was total
Silly.
nonsense. So that was helpful. The thing is that you run a fine line because again, they want characters to be meaningful and have flavor on the board. Because they, in the end, even though we're trying to win games and tournaments, they do want it to be storyline-esque. That's what they shoot for when you talk about what they're looking for, besides just balance, is a narrative-esque on the board. You know what I mean? When they look at stuff. So it's hard to say that some characters are with phase lock and stuff like that, or Phasecap, are they don't want them to just insta die. So there's a fine line. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm very torn on this, because I hate when characters just get insta smoked.
Well, 'cause the good news for characters is that sniping is a very minor deal here. There are very few sniping units in the game right now, and most of them are like pretty mediocre, honestly. So sniping isn't too much of an issue. The sniping from mortals is the biggest one, is getting an angle with mortals where the character becomes the closest. I think bodyguard units should just go back to the way they were, where you can pass off damage to them and just make that as the bodyguard role. So you decide when you want to pass off damage just to keep units alive. But them bodyguards, like the 2-man crisis bodyguard unit, giving you lookout, sir, instead of a 3-man, like what is that? That is just a pointless rule.
I have a rule on that. What really bothers me is if a character is the only thing I can see, I should be able to shoot him with everything. I hate the fact that there's a random unit tucked in a ruin that I can't see, and you just have...
It's the same thing. Untargetable things in general just are silly.
Yeah, I mean, if that guy's just standing out in the open, well, you should just be able to shoot him in the face.
That's my problem with the Flyrant and the Tyrant guard. I would give something else to the Tyrant instead of you just can't shoot it.
Pass off. They auto take mortals per wound if you want to, kind of thing.
Yep.
If you want to dump it off, make it so you can't, so he's not taking the damage, but make it so that those guys are dying quickly if you pass off the damage. So
it's just untargetable things. Just
Nuka's talking about it. This is old school. I know you've been playing for a while if you do that, because you used to be able to take rhinos and make it so you could only see the character and shoot people. But you don't want to abuse it. But also the thing is I hate when someone just literally has 5 random forward deployers and then you just put all of your characters in the open, and because something's closer, I can't shoot any of these characters. That's just a stupid rule. Like, if you're the only visible target, why am I not able to shoot you? That doesn't make any sense. You're like, whoa, Ted. We're not allowed to shoot that guy. I have a feeling that there's somebody closer. But I can only see him. We should
just
probably...
You feel it in the world.
I feel it inside. I'm like, I feel like I should just shoot the only guy I could see. If I have a gun and I'm shooting at the enemy and I can see one thing, I feel like I'll shoot that. I do think that psychic powers and stuff like that shouldn't be able to target characters. I think you should be able to target characters if they're the closest not even just visible. If they're sitting out there, the only visible thing, you should just be able to shoot them in the face. But I don't like being the fact is that some armies really get to beat up on characters, and some armies don't.
Look out, sir, and how it's functioning.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think it's the biggest deal. Like I said, I think the big characters just dying is a bigger deal in terms of like the top meta. But
I love both of these comments. Aiden and John. No, the spore mine you won't even interact with is more important to shoot than the hive tyrant. According to the rules, 100%. Apparently it's terrifying. And John just goes, too much warp dust on the battlefield. Drago, my man.
Drago is a boss. He would be able to sense it, to be fair. He would be able to sense if the character...
he has been wandering around the warp for 10,000
years. Been in
years.
Nurgle's garden, okay? Come on.
He's just... I saw the video, man. I know what he's been doing. Oh, man. I don't even know. There's more questions, but we've had great stuff in the chat. I'm going to give one more. Somebody give me one more question before we leave, and it's got to be the best one of the day. It's got to be better than waffles versus pancakes, too.
So, let's see. Well, honestly, so for your opinion, what are the 3 things that need to happen in the balance update?
Marine has to be buffed. 100%. The fact that Nids can still damage check you into another dimension just can't be a thing. I mean, that army can still just go, hey, I put my army in the middle of the board. I did 30 mortal wounds 2 turns in a row, and
You're dead.
you're dead. I mean,
Yep.
any
It's absurd.
army that doesn't feel, and not that there's not tons.
Meanwhile, there's 30 spore mines in front of you. Move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I mean, the
Let's do
interaction, there has to be some, don't get me started on flyers, but there has to be some stuff on non-interactable things, characters not being shot, flyers, mechanics, and stuff like that. We have to stop just pointing things out. Like, I just thought, like, for instance, the Voltann thing, I just thought we heavy-handed it so much. Instead of going, hey, how can we change these mechanics, we just went, hey, it's too expensive now, figure it out.
The offensive part for me was Thunderkin and the basic troops going up. No, absurd, absolutely absurd. Thunderkin are never going to see play.
John's got a good question on this, and it goes into what you said. Buff the lows or nerf the highs. Always buff the lows first. Work on slowly nerfing the highs. You have to have more often. We have to nerf more often. That way we can nerf slowly and not heavy-handed. Because you can see data. We can have a month or so where it's still winning a little too much, but you can't. GW has literally shown time and time again that they will nerf something into non-playability, and that's not what you're looking for. I'd rather nerf not enough, but frequently. The problem is you can't nerf and then wait 6 months to do anything else. You have to nerf frequently. You have to address things frequently.
Thunderkin are good, Matt. They're just not better than the other options that are similar. There's no reason for them to go up in points. They were perfectly fine at their points cost.
The top question of the day: what ice cream does each Primarch order en masse? Every Primarch should love cookies and cream because it is the best ice cream flavor. I'll fight you over that.
Hey, I like cookies and cream too. I'm not going to disagree there.
Uh-oh. How many points would Brad pay for a trash bag unit? Does nothing but take space and hold objectives. Single body unit looks like a hefty bag. Quite a bit, actually, because it would make me super happy to have it on the board. Like 1,000%. I would be so happy about it. Oh, that's a good question for the Hunter. We'll get to. I'll do the super chat first, then I'm going back to Hunter. I don't even know what that is. Tarkazu. On the topic of sniping characters, the Lookout Sir rule was implemented in 8th because people purposely manipulate the line of sight to snipe characters. 1,000%. We used to do that, like, I've been playing since 2nd. But at 3rd edition, you would literally just drive your rhinos up and just shoot characters in the face. You should effectively, I think maybe the rule could be just ignore your own models when you're trying to do stuff like that. And I get that because people will be douches about it and try to manipulate, but I also don't think that I should be able to just slam 3-4 characters in front of my army, and because 2 spore mines or whatever trash is hiding behind a wall, I can't shoot them. It's stupid. If you can't shoot anything, then I'm going to shoot something. You know what I mean? If you have no other targets, the characters are getting shot in the face. Hunter has a good one. He said, if we undid every nerf, who would have the strongest army other than Voltann?
Tyranids by like a mile. Tyranids are the strongest army in the game, and their codex was absurd. Do you remember Encircle the Prey, where you can just missile out a huge damage dealing unit, kill your opponent's unit, and then go back into reserve, and then do it again every single turn?
You know what? I literally forgot about that because my brain didn't want to think about how stupid that was.
That happened.
But it was also you
couldn't do anything against Tyranids.
Well, you got to remember that you couple that with Overrun too.
Yeah, you couple that with, I mean, one unit, the Hive Tyrant overruns back into the Tyrant Guard support, and you just spam mortal wounds. It's just absurd. The Tyranid book is beyond crazy, and that's why with 2 huge nerfs, it's still 59% win rate. It needs the literal Thunderhammer of God on it. Sick of Tyranids.
Lennon Ending told me to play Tyranids. How many warriors should I buy before the Data Slate? I would wait for the Data Slate. There's a chance that warriors get hit hard.
If you don't have any, just buy like 6 of them and just have 2 3-man basic troops just waiting. Yeah. But if they get hit hard, they might not.
Don't buy like 27 though, because
it might be the case where they want warriors to be a key part of the Tyranid armies, and they're just not going to adjust them anymore, and that's very possible.
Yeah, it's really possible, but I would not buy anything in mass right before a Data Slate change, because there's a good chance that like you just have a lot of expensive models that you're not going to use.
Mint chocolate chip is amazing, to be clear.
Mint chocolate chip's good, but it's not like cookies and cream good, guys. Come on, we're just talking craziness now. That's just crazy talk.
Is really good.
Ooh, bonus points if the bag has a raccoon in it. Can someone sculpt this model for me? A trash bag with a raccoon, so I have a trash panda inside a garbage bag. I need this. I need this so much. They take up physical space.
Yeah, it's the move blocking. You can't move past them unless you want to take a bunch of mortals, and that's a huge deal.
It's better.
Considering 300 recruit, no, but the recruit that I had in that Apocalypse game with 99 attacks, they were awesome. We played an Apocalypse game several months ago, and somebody donated as part of the kind of options you had to make the recruit 99 attacks, and they killed Fate Weaver. 3 models killed Fate Weaver. This is old crew too.
I love everything about it. Oh man! On that note, some good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because honestly, I think we were saying before, especially what you were saying, Brad, where I just think that the internal diversity of the books, we need some points decreases for a lot of options that we're just not seeing, and/or just rules that help them. So the data slate's probably not going to solve all that. We're really relying on chapter approved, and honestly, I have personally been disappointed in the Minotaur and Field Manual. There's just too many data sheets that are completely overlooked and have not been helped. And so a lot of armies are kind of pigeonholed into only a couple builds. And if you're one of the lucky factions with multiple builds, you're having a great time right now. And then there's quite a few factions, especially in the middle, that are relying on a single build, like Sisters, Bloody Rose, just all melee stuff. And some multi-meltas like that. Let's open up the diversity here.
100% of that. And the thing is that we're only going to get, hopefully, only going to get better on this because the meta is at a pace that it hasn't been in a very long time, with so many armies being viable to be played in tournaments, and I don't want to lose that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like they're close enough now. Let's buff up the top, buff up the bottom, bring down the top, and then try and increase the internal diversity of the books. That's a huge deal for me.
We'll end on this. We got a super chat fighting dice. I think every model in the GSC range should be reduced by 10 to 15 points. Agree or disagree?
3 models everywhere.
I was just going to say most of their stuff is 10 to 15 points. It's just like it's going to be tough to play against 700 models of GSC. But I think that a couple of things should go down. I actually think the GSC is underrated. I just think that they came out in a terrible time, which was GSC got released and immediately T'au with unnerf airbursting came out and basically invalidated that army.
Well, and then you had Eldar with swooping hawks.
It's swooping hawks, and we had our indirect also.
Yeah, that indirect was absurd.
Yeah.
And then you also had the Tyrans then came out.
Yeah, they went back to back to back and basically just went, you're not able to play this army. The army now is legit. It just requires a lot of shenanigans. You need to know that army very, very well. That's not a very forgiving army.
I would like to see their mechanic be a little easier to get. The +1 to wound off.
The crossfire?
Yeah, the crossfire. Yeah. I'd like to see it a little bit easier.
I can see that. That was a good question.
If their shooting is more reliable, they become more of a multi-damaging army.
Yeah, right now.
A lot of the builds are shooting heavy, but if it was just easier to do a lot of damage with the shooting.
They're shooting heavy, but they're more take the board heavy. They're a board domination army as opposed to just...
Problem is if they get shot, they just evaporate immediately.
All of the yes. All right, everyone. As usual, thanks for hanging out with us. Everything's rocking.
Thank you, Mr. Brad. It's good talking to you again.
You too, buddy. I haven't seen you in a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
All of the goodness, everyone. If you're coming to Chicago, I will see you then.
Definitely say hello to Brad. Jack, John are going to be there as well, and Nick commentating. So got a lot of the team there, and I think Anthony was thinking of going as well. He might be there as well.
Awesome sauce. Oot.